All right, it's now 6 p.m., April the 10th, 2024. We're going to start the meeting of the Kinney County Groundwater Conservation District. We'll call to order. I have all members present. So, Bartels, Gaines, Schott, Land, Conley, Ward, and Ms. Ankerrod. Everybody's present. So, we're going to move to item number 3, which is Pledge of Allegiance. Everybody please stand. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Director Collier, would you lead us in simple prayer?
Bless this day, Lord.
Okay.
Bless our meeting today. Help us to make good decisions and send us a little rain through Christ our Lord.
Amen. We're going to move to item number 4, which is record public comment. So I've got 3 people signed up for public comment. Ken Tripp.
Good evening, y'all.
Good evening.
My name's Ken Tripp. I'm in Unit 38 across the highway. I have some printouts here of permitted wells inspection reports from this past January, 3.5, 4 months ago. And that is going to be mostly the topic of my discussion. I'll make this as brief, as quick as I possibly can. Let's see here. What I'm really concerned about is missing meters on several wells that we have here. For instance, Brandon Carpenter, who's on the Rules Committee, he signed pumping reports for permittee Jackson Kelso. 2 of their wells, which are their main 2, currently, to the best of my knowledge, have no meters on. Curtis Bowen, a Hondo farmer on the Rules Committee also. He signed the 2022 pumping report for permittee House. I'm not sure if that's the correct way to spell it. 4 of their wells are missing meters. Lance Saitoff. That one. Another Hondo farmer on the Rules Committee, farming on his own property as well as on permittee Bolware and Fields. 12 of their wells are missing meters. And then another one this person doesn't have anyone associated with the Rules Committee that I know of, Jay Red. 12 of their wells have either broken meters or no meters installed at all. 7 of these wells are listed as being sulfur wells. I'm not for sure why that part is important, but I measure hydrogen sulfide as well as other species of sulfur at my current position at work using gas chromatography and flame photometric detectors. So I'm familiar with the gas and with the sulfur, and I know they're flammable and hazardous. If those wells are open to the atmosphere, that's not a very good thing unless they're filtered it properly. So that brings me to what I'm kind of curious about. Rule 4.02b, equipment for establishing quantity of groundwater produced. All non-exempt use wells must have installed meters and monitoring equipment approved by the district from a list of approved vendors. I'll skip the center section and drop down to the last 2 sentences. Metering device failure must be reported to the district, and the district must approve an appropriate measuring alternative. The purpose of the approved meter and monitoring equipment is to ensure that the district has the capability to promptly and accurately measure the amount of groundwater being produced and transported out of the district. So that brings me to a few questions I have. And here they are. Jim Burton and Martina Payne have known these wells didn't have meters on them since early to mid-January 2024. Unknown how long they hadn't been on there. The well meter violators have had 4 months to install and repair these meters this year. Have the meters been installed or repaired? The next question for y'all. Have violations been issued to these permittees? And if not, why not? Next, how do we obtain valid pumping reports if the district is allowing permitted wells to exist without meters on them? And why are individuals who are known not to have meters on their wells being placed directly on the Rules Committee? I mean, come on, that's common sense. This situation is totally unfair to permittees who follow the rules and have meters as required by you. Are y'all aware that y'all have that many of permitted wells out there?
This is not a discussion item. This is only statement.
Then that is the information I would like to provide to the public. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Can you put all that in writing?
Yeah,
Can we have a copy of that?
sure.
After the meeting's fine.
Sure.
We can make
Not a problem.
That, can you have Jim address that?
No, this is not a discussion. Troy Hibbett.
Hi, I'm Troy Hutchison. Some of y'all know me. I've worked with spouses and so forth as I teach high school here in Brackettville. I have some long-term concerns, and I feel like that we should be, at this stage, be prepared to address them in our plans to prevent what happened in the 1960s in Fort Stockton. Fort Stockton, as you're probably aware, because that's what established rule of capture with groundwater to begin with, was they had the spring. It was very much like ours, Lost Moor Springs, Comanche Springs, right there in town in Fort Stockton, with a tremendous amount of spring flow coming out of it. And in the 1960s, agricultural interests to the west of Fort Stockton, as you can see if you drive out there right now, pecan groves, which are super water intensive, basically started pumping the groundwater and pumping it in an unregulated fashion. And at the time, that was legal. And the courts determined that it was legal, which is one of the reasons why we have groundwater boards like this one. Once the spring there dried up in Fort Stockton, downstream, the community, people living downstream, their property values plummeted. It affected the Fort Stockton Historical Society estimates 5,000 people in Fort Stockton downstream of that particular spring. I see this time right now as a parallel. That spring affects the property values of everyone here that lives here in town. One of the things with my particular ownership at my house, I'm a member of Fort Clark Springs, and I have one of those conveyable memberships that if I sell, when I bought the house, the membership was passed to me. If I was to sell my house, the membership would convey to other people. So it directly impacts my particular property values in terms of the saleable ability if I was to sell my house, that it does affect my property values. I'm sure as an employee of the fort that we're also aware that their ability to make revenue declines when the spring's not functioning, when there's not water in the springs. So I have some long-term concerns, and I feel like that the reason why we have a board like this is to, as your website says, and y'all probably have this, the district strives to strike a balance between conservation, preservation, efficient and beneficial use of the groundwater, along with protection of private property rights of landowners, all for the benefit of the citizens and landowners of Kinney County, and not now, but also for future generations. If we allow at minimum, the spring lake to go dry and the pool to go dry year in and year out without addressing water restrictions, like other, Uvalde's under stage 3 water restrictions right now, just for example. Or is it 4? 3? 5. Stage 5 water restrictions right now. And we're not addressing water restrictions for for the people pumping, whether that's the city users. I mean, no one's come out and told me I can't water my yard, or that I only should water my yard on Mondays or Wednesdays or anything like that with the city pumps. I'm sure that the Fort's not issued that sort of thing. And at the same time, we're not addressing the well use around the county with any sort of restrictions when we know that we're in a drought, and asking and hoping that it rains sometime. That's not a plan. That's not a sound management strategy. Now, what a sound management strategy is, that certainly is up for debate, but I would implore the board to consider, at minimum, the basic sorts of voluntary water restrictions as a first step, then moving on to other levels of water restriction, such that we're at minimum maintaining the spring flow out of the spring into the pool, so that the Fort members can enjoy that resource, so that the Fort can bring in people, the people that want to have a wedding, people that want to have a family reunion. My family had a family reunion out there. We brought 75 people in for a family reunion out of the Fort a couple years ago, and others do that sort of thing. And so that's revenue that the Fort loses if someone comes out and goes, well, there's not a place for our kids to swim. And so I think that would be my bottom line. I mean, I'd like to see the water flow from the spring all the way to Mr. Conley's property and all the way through the Fort. But as a minimum, I'd like to see that pool full of water so that the kids can swim, so the families can bring their families out here for a family reunion, and so that the property values of everyone that lives on the Fort, everyone here that lives in town, are not adversely impacted over the long term. And if we start now, then we don't turn into Fort stock. And that's my long. There's a long-term concern, and then there's short-term concerns. So that's all I'm asking, is that we consider going to the same sorts of restrictions that surrounding counties have, and if we take a stepwise approach to it and see if that makes improvements, then that's a reasonable approach to take with that. We're not all for bringing a hammer down, but start easing into that sort of thing so that we don't proceed in the same way as Fort Stockton does. It would be awful hard to sell my house if people come out here and go, what's there to do in Brackenville? Well, there used to be a spring. So, and I'm sure that that's been an issue. I think I've talked to some folks that are in realty, and they have had people come up and say, yeah, this looks like a nice place to live, but I'm concerned about your water supply. And that's a real concern that people have. So I'll leave it at that.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Next is David Palmer.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you, everybody, for recognizing me. Dave Palmer. Just here to ask a couple little questions. Really shouldn't take too long. So I say these accurately. I took a little bit of notes, but Janelle, right here. First question is for Janelle. There's pretty widespread concern about rules and the existing rules, and I'm on the rules committee trying to modify and maybe improve the rules to do some things in the future. But currently there's a rule that by January 15th, let's say, that there's supposed to be an annual groundwater pumpage report submitted by the required permit holders that need to do that. So the question would be to you, Janelle, has there been any violations of that rule? Has everybody that's required to do that report actually done it yet?
No.
You said no discussion.
There's no discussion here. You can put stuff in writing, we'll address it, but this is a comments only.
Okay, so my comment is, people are concerned that maybe there are people that have not properly submitted their annual groundwater pumpage report. And I, along with the public in general, would like to know if there's been any violations of that. All right, and my second question for future discussion is, I guess to you, Matt, I'll just ask you as an acting board president, the board president. I've been coming to these meetings for quite a while, and item number 9, the item changes, but the item is review the Texas Water Development Board's drought index and other monitoring sites. And I know there's some products that you guys will review today and always review. There's been some people that want to see that on the website, and that's maybe a different issue. That would be great, but there's some issues with that. But my comment or proposal would be, most of the people, you know, on the conservation side of the equation, they're trying to find solutions to keep the spring running, are concerned that the creek is 0 CFS or less than 5 is a number that's been thrown out too, because that prevents water from getting, you know, past the ford, past the Red Bridge or whatever. But I've never heard the spring flow addressed in a board meeting since I've been coming to them. So my proposal is, could the current spring flow be made a monthly agenda item on the groundwater agenda every month? To me, it seems important that the board knows and acknowledges what the spring flow is in Lost Moor Springs. You know, Pinto Creek would be nice too, but let's just say, what is the spring flow now in Lost Moor Spring? That should be an agenda item for discussion and possible action. We need to act on that number if it's not what we want. So that's what I would propose, that every month on the groundwater meeting agenda, Lost Moor Spring flow, which is an important issue to a lot of people in this county, the majority of the voters want to know what it is and what's going to be done about it. So I don't need an answer now, but please consider adding that to the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Director's comments?
Yes.
Go ahead.
There's no Rules Committee report on the agenda tonight because the Rules Committee has not met since the last board meeting. We meet tomorrow night. But with spring break and Easter and we're going to try to meet with, you know, didn't want to meet with the eclipse. People worried about traffic. So there's no committee meeting or committee report tonight, but we will meet tomorrow night.
Anybody else have anything? Okay, I'm gonna, Janelle, I'm gonna go ahead. I want to put 2 items on the next agenda. First item is going to be the discussion of possible action over possible overpumping, not reporting, which would cover people reporting their records when they're supposed to on an annual basis, and any outstanding payments. That's the first.
Matt, may I make a suggestion? They can't hear you in the back.
Okay, that's fine. The second item on this agenda is going to be for the approval of everybody here, and this is an important deal. I want this board to start a discussion with a Fort Clark board dealing with a Fort Clark pool. That doesn't mean that we can do anything. That doesn't mean that anything may happen or whatever. But there needs to be a discussion about the pool. So that needs to get set on the next agenda. Whether that happens or not, that's going to be up between. That's going to be up between what the Fort Clark board makes a decision on. But I want somebody to start discussing this. So those two items are on the next agenda. Is there any other comments? Go to the next item on the agenda, which is discussion and possible action, approval of minutes from the March regular meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion. I have a second. Is there any other questions or discussion on that? I'm going to abstain since I was here. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carried. Move to the next item on the agenda. All right, so discussion and possible action on the financial statements for March 2024.
Total income for March, $9,616. Year-to-date, $569,156.41. Total expense for March, $16,690.35. Year-to-date expense, $212,119.28.
I'll entertain a motion at this time.
I'll make a motion.
I have a motion. I have a second. Do I have any further discussion on this item?
I'm not sure.
No, Mr. South. Mr. Shopman, sorry. Is there any other discussion on this item? With that said, take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Motion carries. Go to the next item on the agenda, which is a review of monthly investment officers report.
I thought we were moving money out of the money market, or some of it.
We did, but we didn't get the CD for the TDN, TDX, whatever the bank came out. We didn't get that done until right after the first of, so that's the reason it's not showing up on there yet.
How much money was that?
It's 200,000, and then 200,000 going to Jacksonville.
Have any other discussion? This is just a review, so with that being said, we'll move to the next item on the agenda. Discussion and possible action, invoices received, invoices paid.
The legal bill, was that older? Because he's been ill. I didn't think he's working on anything
No,
recently.
he hasn't been. That was like for the third, because when he developed the illness, this was like the third quarter.
Okay, so this is for
Yes.
work last fall.
Previous. Yes, sir. Like back last summer, I think June through something, yeah. But we haven't had anything since then.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and I have a second. Any further discussion on the item? Take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Now we go to review the Texas Water Billboard Drought Index and other monitoring sites. Yes, go ahead.
What y'all have in your monitor well sites, or just general information, our monitoring. That was, we were delayed getting it posted on the website. Didn't get a call back from the gentleman who posted it, so that was late getting posted. Something we did post was the drought index. We'll get that posted first thing in the morning.
Jim, have you learned anything from that monitor that you put in the spring?
If it's not in that package, it is in my presentation.
Okay.
Look to the next to last page.
But that's in your presentation? Yeah, no.
It should be in there. If it's not, it is in my presentation.
Okay. We'll just wait for that. Do y'all have any other questions about anything? I've got some, but I'm gonna wait till Jim has his presentation. If there's no other questions or anything, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. Review the Kinney County Appraisal District proposed budget for 24-25.
This is just for information. The appraisal district is required to send a copy to all the taxing entries of their budget each year. We have to keep that on file. So it's just an informational thing to know that all it is with their proposed budget.
Did they talk to you about this? Did they talk to you any about this?
About it. Brought it over. Well, just brought it over to them. Brought it over first to us. But it's something they provide us every year. It's just copies of their budget.
They didn't explain anything or nothing? Any questions, Patty?
Yeah, that's just a review on it.
All right, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, number 11, which is discussion and possible action of the Interlock Agreement joint funding for GMA 10 explanatory report. Can you tell us a little bit about that, Janelle?
Yes. But GMA 10 as well as GMA 7, particularly on GMA 10, the districts compose the GMA-10, is getting ready to hire a consultant for the next cycle, if you will. The information that's required, and ultimately it goes to the Water Development Board. And you have to have an interlocal. There has to be a governmental entity that is like the kind of the head of the GMA-10 to kind of sign off on the contract with the consultant. The one that represents GMA-10 is the Barton Springs Edwards Aquifer Groundwater Conservation District. They're the ones that's kind of responsible for the whole thing. The districts of GMA-10, of course, us, Uvalde County, Medina County, Comal County, Plum Creek, which is Lockhart, I believe, and San Marcos, Hayes County, Comal, that's Comal, Groundwater Conservation District. But this just essentially just explains a little bit about the contract. The most that we will, our total for all the work will be a total of $10,912. Ours is the least amount out of all 6 districts because there's less work to do in our little sliver of GMA-10. Annually, it will run us about $3,600, $3,637 a year. So this comes around every 5 years, on a 5-year cycle. So this comes, so it's been several years ago since we've done this.
Isn't this in our budget?
Yes, sir. I don't have any budget for it. Actually, I think I'll add a little bit more because I didn't know for sure how much it was going to be. I knew it would be a little less than 5,000. But ours is some of them are 8,000 and 9,000 is what those districts have to pay. Ours is the smallest amount they have to pay.
Motion to approve.
We got a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
I'm gonna ask one question, has anything changed on this since the last one?
Well, we have a different consultant, and that's essentially the type of work they do is pretty much the same each year.
Everything else has stayed the same?
Yes, sir. It's about the same.
Anybody else have any
And
questions?
part of what they're required to do is produce what's called an explanatory report, and that gets into the next agenda item too. Monitors now.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on the item? Anybody? Take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
All ayes have it, so that passes. Move to the next item on the agenda. Discussion of possible action contract between Plum Creek Conservation District and Collier Consulting for GMA-10. Explanatory report.
Okay. This is with Edward Barton Springs Edwards Aquifer Groundwater District kind of being the hat over all of it. Then there's also a separate one that is considered the contract manager. They kind of manage the contract as review the things that the consultant has submitted, and then they bill them. If that's accepted by them, then they send out a bill to each one of the groundwater districts for their fair share. The consultant is Collier Consulting, as I said previously. It's just a simple. Gives the term, the terms that it would run. It could be terminated. With an independent contractor. It's a pretty general, simple contract. And again, this was done, same thing, 5 years ago.
this paid through GMA 10 or we bill direct?
Plum Creek is the representative for all of them, but
Yeah.
they'll be billing us, yes, sir.
The options at the end of it, is that the option for us or for GMA 10? The ranch house, the media jaw, streamline,
That's on the next.
the very last, or is that the next?
That's the next.
That's the next,
That's the
yeah.
next
Oh,
one.
sorry.
That's not
Sorry.
So we just need a motion on this one, the contract with Plum Creek.
I'll entertain a motion. Is there any other person, does anybody want to say anything?
I'd like to say,
So. We got a motion on the floor by Director Conley. Do you have a second? Second. Any further discussion on the item? Entertain a vote. All those in favor? That's carried. Move to the next item on the agenda. Which is discussion possible action upgrade for website host platform.
Are you working on this, Janelle, or
Yes, Marty and I both have.
what do y'all kind of recommend?
We
Yeah, I see your-
we got three, we went out, we checked with several different groundwater districts to see. We've been using someone, local. And then, he's done a very good job with the stuff we've presented. We reached the point that we need something more expanded, I guess more secure and more up to date, if you will. Checking with a number of groundwater districts, we came up with three different ones, three different companies to get quotes from. One of them's Ranch House Design. They're out of San Angelo. But they do more marketing type work for realtors, livestock entities, small businesses, that type. Their price was $1,500 setup plus $900 annually for the web hosting. And they want 50% deposit before beginning any work. The next one was Media Jaw, and I'm sorry, Ranch House Design Sell Horton. Media Jaw is from San Angelo. $500 setup, $50 monthly plus incidentals for a total of $729 annually. There again, it's kind of a rather small company, and what they presented to us was didn't go into a great deal of detail to explain. The last one is called Streamline. There's several groundwater districts use that. They have a $500 setup, and it's $3,600 annually, which can be, paid monthly if need be. They're based in California. They do have an office in Dallas. They called, after we reached out to them, they called Marty and had a Zoom call that lasted probably 30, 45 minutes, answering questions. The lady was very nice, answered any questions that we had. They also they deal with governmental entities and also special districts, which we are a special district, and there's certain requirements that have to be, met. They also, in what she mentioned, and also in the whole packet that they sent us, they keep up with each state individually as far as state requirements for the website, things that you put on your website, also anything federal that comes up that would need to be on your website. So they're really I think this would be the best route to go. Plus, they're available 24/7. So, and to do the initial setup, they would do it, transfer our stuff over, but would also walk us through on our part and what we would need to provide That way we get the stuff put on the website, just a training session. I know 3,600 years of good debt, but I think it'd be well worth it. And I think this is something that would be beneficial to the board, but I'm sorry. But we, you know, for everybody in general.
The local individual is being cooperative on it.
Yes.
Okay, he's good with turning it over.
Yes. Yes. And fully understands. Yeah.
Do they currently help other people in the state of Texas, what counties?
Yes.
Or
Yes.
locally? Or
Okay.
down there in the
Okay.
area?
The Groundwater District has used them for 2 or 3 years and have been very pleased with them, streamlined. Also, whatever in East Texas, not Lone Star. One of the ones over in East Texas, there's 3 different ones that have used. It's streamlined for several years and very, very pleased with the work they've done on their website and keeping them in line with state regulations and so forth. We can also with them, correct me if I'm wrong, aren't they able to go ahead and get us set up with like emails, like say the president would be president at.
Yeah, they'll set us up with our individual emails and everything. We'll have easy access, like if we need to put something on the website, like the agenda and stuff, we will have access to that. We won't have to send it to somebody to put it on our website and everything. We each will have access, so we can do it within, that day, that morning, and it'll show up. If we do have a problem, we'll call them, and then they'll call us back within 30 minutes to work on the problem.
The old way we would have to contact.
Yeah, the old way would have to contact the host. If he doesn't answer, it's kind of like waiting for him to call us back to put it back on the website. So this, we will have access to it. We will be able to do it here in the office, not have to wait for that middle person and everything. We'll have access, and then it'll people want to subscribe to like a newsletter or something that we send out. They can type in their email and subscribe to that way, and we'll just send a massive email that everybody subscribes to.
And it's an annual contract?
It's an annual contract. It's they broke it down for us in this packet that Janelle attached to in there. They broke it down, and it has everything that we could all do, and it shows you how we can have access to the dash. We can put all our meetings for a whole year in advance, the time and dates. We can put that the agenda. We can put it in that morning and everything, like 72 hours before. We can. It gives us. Honestly, this would be the best way to go because it gives us everything that we have access. We can have access to. We don't have to go to an outside person. We will control it here in the office and everything.
Since I was the one that pushed for this, I'll make the motion to do a streamline.
I think this could be very beneficial.
Yeah, I've got a motion and I've got a second. Any further discussion on the item? The money's already set aside. You did a budget itemized for that. It's budgeted for?
Yes. Well, we didn't have budget money for this specific item. We had money for
you want to pay it out?
Upgrades.
You want to pay it out of something?
Yeah, so we've got
You can figure out.
office expense.
Alrighty.
Trying to make you laugh.
You made me laugh.
Any other filling? Anything? So is anybody got any more comments or anything? Okay, with that, all I need is a vote. Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. So we'll use streamlines. The next item on the agenda, a presentation by Dr. Hutchison. A progress report update on various items. And I'm going to state this for the record for everybody. So, Dr. Bill is going to be giving a presentation. Jim's going to be giving a presentation. There will not be any discussion with anybody from the audience. If y'all want to have any questions or anything, they've said that they'll take any questions after the meeting. So after the meeting's over, if y'all want to ask them any questions or anything like that, then you're more than welcome to. But any questions that will go to them will be directly from board members. If we have any questions or anything, then we'll go straight to them. Dr. Hutchison.
Matt. So, I'd like to hear some of the questions and his answers. So what
You can
we can say after the meeting. Okay, it's open. And,
Yep.
Thank you. This presentation will be posted on the website probably tomorrow sometime. We're making some final changes to it. There's a lot of information in here. A lot of it isn't really something we can see because I'm going to talk. There's been a lot of. There's been a lot of letters received regarding data, and we've heard about the website getting upgraded. That'll take care of things into the future. But I also wanted to talk a little bit about data availability in the past. Talk a little bit about data use. And actually, a lot of it is indirectly going to answer some of the questions we heard during public comment. And then I'm going to provide an update on the geologic update that we're working on. So we'll start with data availability, and I split this into two things. First, we'll talk about availability. And this is largely the historic data. So the USGS site has the Las Moras Springs data. That's the official place where you can get the Las Moras data. And there's red stuff's a link. The Water Development Board site is where we get our precipitation and evaporation data. This goes back to 1940. It's on a monthly basis. I've also set up a Google Drive where all the material related to the analyses and data and associated technical memoranda associated with the model development are all there. And so we're going to talk specifically about rainfall pumping and spring flow, and then I'll also talk about rainfall and recharge, how that's related. This is just a screenshot of the USGS site that has the spring flow data. We'll talk a little bit more about this in the use section. The Water Development Board, this is the rainfall and evaporation data. Rainfall goes back to 1940, the evaporation to 1954 on a monthly basis. The Google Drive files have all the draft tech memos that I developed last year with model development. It also has all the data I used, processing codes, and all the references that are in the document, that are documented in the technical memorandum. So all this has been available for over a year. These are the list of the tech memos that I've completed. This is how the drive looks. It has each one individually as an individual folder. These are the ones we'll be talking about today and tomorrow. Now, one of the key ones is the rainfall and Las Moras spring flow memo I did last June. It's a statistical analysis of monthly rainfall and daily spring flow organized on a monthly basis from 1940 to 2022. The memo only goes through 22 because I did it last year. It outlines the basis for predictive simulations that I'll be running with the model once it's completed. And this is basically looking at what are the effects of pumping reductions related to specific spring flow thresholds, that sort of thing. I talked a little bit about this last September. And I've updated the data through 23. It's not on the Google Drive yet, but that relates to some of the analyses I do here, and I put the link in again to this specific memo. The groundwater level data, these are the depth of water data. This is organized in one of the tech memos that's related to the model calibration, and it's organized into Kinney County data, Water Development Board data, and Los Moras data. Now, the Kinney County data consists not only of the work that Jim's been doing since 2013, all the raw and processed data are in there. They go through late 22, I think, is when I last went through that. It also has Dr. Gold's data that he collected from 09 to 12. And then there's a combined folder that has both of them. The Los Moras data is basically the same raw data as I did in the one I just talked about, but its processing focuses more on the data for model calibration. And I'll be using these data in the subsequent slides. Now, the Water Development Board data, also, the Water Development Board maintains a groundwater database that has water level data, historic water level data. And so I've grabbed all that for Kinney County, processed it for model calibration. And then finally, recharge estimates. These are all documented in Tech Memo 2310 that I did last year, just about a year ago. And it has the initial estimates of recharge for the model that will be adjusted during model calibration. I'll talk more in detail about that here in a minute. So now, how do we use all this stuff? Well, Fort Clark days, somebody sent me this picture with Gage and David at Fort Clark days, and this graph caught my attention. So I zoomed in, and it's basically a graph that shows, this is how you use data. It's a graph that shows the relationship between rainfall, spring flow, and pumping. Now, the only thing with this is in 2022 and 2023, you show zero spring flow. Well, it went dry during the summer, but it wasn't dry the entire year. This sort of connotes that it was dry for 2 full years, and that's simply not true. Also, this pre-2020 average is a little vague. Is it just the last 3 or 4 years? Does it go back to 1940? It's not specific. So, and it also, since it was done earlier, you didn't have any 23 data. So I took it upon myself to update the graph with correct data, update the graph through 23 and also put in the correct data. So what we see here is the rainfall. Oh, I got one little tidbit. Precipitation data isn't complete until for another couple weeks. The last 3 months are not available, so I assumed about 2 inches. It is complete through September, so that's why it's about 17.33. But the story here is that the rainfall is a little bit lower than this average. Oh, I'm sorry. First off, let's start with the beginning. It was not zero spring flow in 22 and 23. It was low, but it was not zero. And the other thing is I took 95 to 2020 as the average, as the substitute for what was in the other one. So what we see is the rainfall is a little bit below average. The spring flow went down dramatically and the pumping was going up. The problem here is that comparing the last 3 years to average doesn't capture the full dynamics of this system. So what I did is I did the same color scheme, same idea, but now I've run the annual data all the way back to 1995. So again, we see the last 5 years has been relatively dry, but not as dry as some other years. The spring flow crashed. The pumping has been going up. But here's the important part. These wet years, whenever that rainfall spikes up, basically the system is filling up, and then it drains slowly. Then it rains again and it fills up, then it drains slowly. That's what the spring is. It's the outlet as it fills up and drains. What we don't see in any period prior to the last 5 years is 5 straight years of below average rainfall. Every time there were dry years, there was always an interceding wet year that kind of filled things back up. We don't see that here. In 22, you may remember, there was a 7-inch rain in a few days. And it filled it up. We got a lot of spring flow, but it drained off pretty quickly. But you don't see that in here because that 7-inch rain wasn't all that significant in comparison to these years where 30, 35 inches of rain fell. So you got to keep in mind, oh, and this one is set up with, in the same style with spring flow expressed in acre feet per year. This is the same one, but now the spring flow is expressed as an average annual CFS. So it's the same information, just the spring flow is expressed a little different. But it also, it still shows how those wet years are very important. Well, now let's take the spring flow and extend it back to the full record of 1940. This is the annual spring flow from 1940 to 2023. And we see it spike up and down, spike up and down. And on the left is expressed as a volume, an annual volume, acre feet per year. On the right, it's the average CFS for that year. Just two different ways of expressing it. So this tells us it's going up and down, up and down. Okay, well, let's look at it from a 5-year running average perspective. Well, what do we see? We see in the 50s, there it is, very low. Spikes back up, and then it sort of hovers around this area. Then it crashes at around 2011, 2012 during that severe drought. Then it popped back up, then it came back down again. But note, right now, on a 5-year average, right now is not the driest it's ever been. It's similar to the 50s, but it isn't like what it was 15 years ago. Let's run that out to a 10-year average, 10-year running average. Same thing. Now it's starting to level off in most of the intervening years, but you can see in the 50s it was significantly low. Around 1970 it was low. In about 2012, 2013 it was really low. Right now it's low, but it wasn't as low as it's been. Now from a recharge standpoint, we all know that rainfall comes in and 3 things happen to it. It'll either evaporate right away, it could run off, or it could infiltrate into the ground. The Bennett-Sayer report from 1962 was very detailed in how it described the importance of direct infiltration of rainfall as recharge. The dissected karst terrain basically means there's these slopes, water gets into these channels, and the real recharge is in the channels. And so the recharge is dependent on how much rain there is, the intensity of the storms, and how quickly it gets into those stream channels. So in the tech memo I did for the recharge, I relied on the Bennett-Sayer work. They estimated that based on a stream discharge data from 1940 to 1950, about 1.4 inches a year recharges the West Nueces and Nueces River areas. They acknowledged that there were some limitations in that work and figured that it was really just a correct order of magnitude. So that gives me some ability to have a starting point and make adjustments during model calibration. What I documented in the report was the initial attempt to distribute that spatially and over time. And we expect that would be adjusted during calibration. Now, on space, what I've done is initially I've split the area up into 6 zones. This yellowish area down in the south is the Upper Cretaceous or Austin Chalk outcrop. You see the channels in there. It's the channels where most of the recharge is going to occur, not in the upland areas. The red area is the Edwards Aquifer. That's the important recharge source for the spring and for the pumping wells, since most of them are completed in the Edwards Aquifer. And then the blue area is the Trinity. So again, it's the same idea. Most of the recharge is going to occur in these channels, not in the upland area. And I just have to go through and work through the process spatially and over time to make sure that the numbers are consistent with the old reports, but also make sense with respect to the other information we have in the model. Now, another way to look at this is when it rains a lot, we expect a lot of recharge. So along the x-axis, we see the rainfall, annual rainfall. On the y-axis, we see the recharge based on this initial work that I did. Well, it doesn't line up perfectly because we don't expect That to happen depends on how the rainfall occurs. So this is 1995 to 2023. More rainfall, more recharge, but you can see that average, if 20 inches of rain, we're only getting about 1.6 inches of rain of recharge. So let's break this down a little bit. This is 95 to 05. I put the years on here. And again, this is for downloading and studying. 05 to 14, these are the years when we had some very low rainfall years. But notice they're not consecutive. 2015 to 23, now what we're seeing is the last 5 years have all been very low, with nothing in between to fill the system back up. We haven't seen that in over 30 years. So it is an unusual circumstance from a rainfall perspective. So what do the data tell us? Well, the variation in rainfall explains most of the variation in spring flow. Groundwater pumping does have an effect on spring flow, but rainfall is the biggest contributor, the biggest deciding factor. We have had low rainfall recharge conditions since 2019. That's 5 years and counting. It's possible it will continue to go on like that. Other historic drought periods, ones that were even worse than this one, always have at least 1 or 2 interceding wet years. In other words, there's an opportunity to fill the aquifer, if not fully, then partially, before it starts dropping again. So the key here is that comparing our current conditions with averages ignores the dynamics of the fill and drain concept. And this is what, I didn't make this up, Bennett Sayre talked about this back in 1962. And importantly, back in September I talked about this, current pumping has gone up. Current pumping, now it's going to be about almost 11,000, 6,000 to 10,000 acre feet. If that were to be reduced to 4,000 to 5,000, spring flow would increase about 1 to 8 CFS, not very much. And so the key here is that any suggestion that eliminating pumping would somehow result in normal or average spring flow during a severe drought like this are not supported by the data. Okay, so now we'll talk a little bit about the geology update, shift gears. So, as we talked about in November, why are we updating the geologic structure of the model? Well, the model was developed, or started working on the development in 23. I completed 13 tech memos that covered various parts of the model. And one of them was Tech Memo 2301, where we talked about using the geologic framework that was in the 2010 model. Now, we knew that had some limitations, but it seemed like a good idea to move ahead to get the model completed. Now, the geologic framework is that's used in the model is a very simplified version of the geology, and that was largely because of the limitations of the ModFlow code that existed at the time, ModFlow 2005 code. And we relied on the URS faults, the 2004 work, and that's documented in Tech Memo 5. So as we were moving along in 23, we knew we had issues with pumping, and possibly as I started working with it, the geologic structure and the faults, there was some suggestion that maybe that was part of the problem. We knew the pumping was. So while the pumping issues were being resolved, I recommended that we update the geologic structure and take advantage of that time while the pumping issues got resolved. So this was basically improvements with new geophysical data, and most importantly, remove all these simplifications and limitations associated with the code, since we're using a more updated code. And so it's a better representation of the geologic structure. Well, y'all approved that back in November, and the work was going to be completed in 2 phases. Phase 1 was completed at the end of February. That's the geophysical interpretation and the preliminary maps. And we're currently working on phase 2, and we're expecting to have that completed by the end of May. This is going to have the fault lines, the structure, the igneous intrusions, facies changes, karst development, sinkholes, all kinds of stuff. So we'll wind up with a 3D map, 3D geologic map, and an updated model that we can then move forward with. The Phase 1 letter report is on the Google Drive. There's the link. These are the deliverables that are on that, all the data that's on there. For anybody who's that interested. And this is a 3D rendering of the current, the 2010 model that we're currently using, or what we're currently using last year. This is a 4-layer model. The alluvium is its own layer. That's the real in and out of the system as far as recharge goes. That bluish color is the Upper Cretaceous, the Austin Chalk. The green is the Edwards, and the yellowish is the Trinity. Now you notice that doesn't match up the county boundaries. It extended out a little bit beyond the county. The new model, we snap it right to the county lines because eventually this model will be integrated in with the regional model that's being completed by the Water Development Board. It will be due, I think, at the end of the year. And so this allows us to have better, talk better to the regional model, so we were able to snap it right to the county line. We've now gone to a 6-layer concept. I don't have the alluvium on here. We haven't added that on yet. So layer 1 will be the Austin Chalk, then the Eagle Ford Shale, and the Grayson Shale, the Del Rio Clay. And those 3 layers were all part of layer 2 in the old model, what I call the Upper Cretaceous. Then we have the Georgetown limestone, Salmon Peak limestone lumped in layer 4, and then the Glen Rose or the Trinity in layer 5. So we're expanding, we're getting better definition based on some of the things I've seen in working with the old model and the one I was working on last year. And then this is the same thing with the surface geology laid on top of it. Now the faults. There's 3 basic sources of information on the faults. One is the Geologic Atlas of Texas, or the GAT. You hear GAT a lot. In 2010, the USGS published a map of northeastern Kinney County and southern Edwards County. And all that information, the database, their geodatabase is available. And then finally, the URS study that was done in 2004. So these are the GAT faults. This is the Geologic Atlas of Texas faults. And we can see they all kind of move from, I guess, northeast to southwest. There's a lot of density around here and over on the eastern side of the county. You see a little bit over here, but not too much. Now the 2010 report obviously only covers the northeastern part of the county, but these are the important areas, and you see a lot more definition, a lot more structure, a lot more graben structures. So we're building that into the model grid. But you can see that these are sort of cousins of each other. Same basic orientation, same regional structure. The URS faults look quite a bit different. They don't seem to be supported by either the GAT work or the USGS 2010 work. And so this may be some of the source of the problems. This is the set of faults I relied on as I was working through the model last year. So we're still kind of working through this, but it was clear that this was different than the other 2. So we haven't made any final decisions. The way I'm going to structure this is we can sort of slip these in and out and test each one. So again, GAT and MORE are generally consistent. MORE one has more detail, and especially in important areas of the model. URS faults don't seem to appear to be consistent with the GAT or MORE. Maybe that was part of the calibration problems. But we're still working through this, and this was really just an update to keep you up to speed, and we'll have this completed in May. I think that's it. Yeah.
Direction of flow on URS faults?
URS faults, basically faults can act as conduits or barriers. And so in testing them out, you can see what do these block flow? Do these allow a conduit of flow? They're just oriented differently. get a lot of them. So, like I said, we had pumping issues, we had structure issues, and we had potentially faulting issues. And so we wanted to get the most up-to-date geologic information while we were getting the pumping stuff sorted out. So I think we'll be in a lot better shape going forward.
Any directors have any questions? Jim?
Yes, sir.
You have to use the mouse. I don't know what's wrong with the keys. That's right.
Try to keep this under a couple hours. Thank you very much. Appreciate being here. Been asked tonight to talk about some of the field work since the last time we were here in January. And I will do that. I'm gonna need glasses. Right now, we've added additional monitoring locations, and we currently have over 90 locations where we're collecting data. This includes the rainfall information that we brought into the network. One of the things that we've done since early January, I think one of the speakers talked about that, but we went out and looked at all sites, all permitted production wells, or all permitted wells within the county, looking at meter reading verification, documentation. We took photos of every site, and we're looking to have a draft document deliverable in the next few weeks. I can address one of the individuals in the public. I think one of the first individuals brought up some meters. I don't have the information in front of me and what you're looking at, but I know that one of the individuals, Bulware, probably has, I don't know how many, but off the top of my head, but 15 or 20 wells that are not being used. They're non-operational. They don't have ability to pump. So something like that in the field sheet would say no meter. J-Red, the same thing. You mentioned some of the farmers. I think Sawed-Off in particular, Bain and Carpenter. Those are reporting using FieldNet. And I have, they've actually been very helpful. We're looking at being able to integrate that. They can get information immediately. And they have sent me information regarding this year already, where they start pumping at 1 a.m. and then it will stop at, the next morning at 8 a.m. or something. They know exactly how much they pump for the exact amount of time, and there's a volume that's immediately. And those 3 individuals have already reported to me for 2024 pumping probably 5 to 8 times, just depending on who it is. Anyway, they've been very helpful, and so some of the information, if you want to talk more about what you think is missing. Now, we're not perfect. I think there's 1 or 2. I'll have to look. I think we thought there was 1, there wasn't, but there's a couple that we do need to put a meter on. We're working with that individual to get that done. Again, I don't want to spend too much time, but if you'd like to talk about that more, but this district is taking direction and action to try to get that accomplished. I don't think there's as many missing meters on as you think. Overview of existing conditions. There are 51 individual permits. We've got 32 unique permit holders. There's 115 unique wells. 59 of those wells are in use or have the ability to be used. It doesn't necessarily mean they were pumped, but they have the ability to be used. What's 115? What is 59? 56. There are 56 that are non-operational, that they do not have the ability to pump. And something like this, there's many wells that are permitted in this county that look like this. And when we went up with one of our field sheets and we went to this well, we would have said no meter. So I think Director Ward was alluding to this earlier. but we've got 6 additional monitoring locations that we are immediately ready to implement. It's just a matter of time. Automated instrumentation, and then we've got additional planned deployment in the fall. We've got a web-based pumping app that we've been talking about for quite a while. I'm very much appreciative of the board on changing the web hosting platform. We've had a very difficult time. I think Ms. Hobbs indicated we weren't able to get some of the slides up onto the website before tonight's meeting. Well, we sent them to the individual. They weren't able to do it. And so with this new website platform, I'm looking forward to being able to have more ability to get more data up, make it available. That's the goal. That's been our goal for quite a while. And we certainly struggled with this, making it happen probably not as fast as some would like, but it's been in the works for quite a while. The app is currently on pause right now. We were about ready to roll it out, but then when the rules committee started talking, there was some discussion about how much you wanted to, how often you wanted people to report. Did we want to send out automated emails? There were some discussions and things that I think need to be ironed out in the rules. One of the things about being out in the field in January, we have wells that have 2 meters. You know, we've got a well and 1 meter's going to the north pivot and 1 meter's going to the west pivot. It's all coming out of one well, and the permit holder is reporting they're reporting this meter for here, this meter for here, and they're reporting it all right. And that's easy to do on paper. If I need to do it electronically and develop an app, we need to think about this before we just roll this out. I do know one individual who tried to get into the app, and she did great, and I appreciate that. And I'm looking forward to rolling it out and getting people engaged and involved in that. But we're not quite there yet. It is this close to being rolled out. Once we understand exactly what the structural changes are, it will get rolled out. I like that it will get rolled out in Streamline is a fantastic company. I know Vic uses it in Uvalde, and I like that they're in tune to the state of Texas, the minimum requirements, maximum requirements, whatever you need to do legally on your website. That's a great decision by the board tonight. But again, I'm looking forward to getting that rolled out. Here's the other thing. All of the data that we are collecting is all being collected and formatted for online viewing. This is intelligent metadata that's being collected. We have completed an initial ArcGIS database for the monitoring well stuff. I'm looking forward to bringing in additional information as we can. I've got that available now. I cannot post it to a website. I'm not going to share this just yet, but it is in the works. It's in the draft stages of being developed. And then ideally, I think Vic Hildebrand and Uvalde's got 2 or 3 wells on his side. I know he's got Beidler and some others. But ideally what you do is you get the spring and you get the wells, some selected ones on the website. At any point, somebody can go to the website. You can click on it, and you can see you want to see the spring flow discussed here every month. How about putting it up on the website? And then you can click on it. Now, it's available. I mean, you can go to the USGS, and they'll tell you what it is. But if you get all the information in one site, I think that's what you're looking for. We've been working on this for quite a while. This just didn't happen over the last couple of weeks. This is something we've always been collecting data, thinking that this would be where we want to go. With the additional web hosting site platform, I think it's going to be available. I'm not going to give any timelines because I will, whatever I say will be wrong. Okay, let's talk about water level graphs. And I'm not going to get into a whole bunch of science. I appreciate Dr. Bell and the science behind this. But he's right. That the primary reason we are in a drought here is because we have not had rainfall. And I'm going to show you some water level graphs, and we can talk about it. Is pumping influencing the groundwater? You're pulling water out of the ground, it's going to have some influence. But it's not the reason the spring's dry. And it will. If we don't get any rain, it's going to get worse. I mean, that's the reality. And let's look at a couple wells. And I selected some wells in various different parts of the county for different reasons. The Texas Water Development Board True La Rosa well, that is GMA 10 DFC. Is that for True La Rosa? It's been there for a long time. It's a deep well. It is 775 feet. It is in the Edwards. It is in the direct path of recharge for Lost Moras Spring. Okay, Big Mill and Red Mill, those are off a little bit to the west. Kickapoo Cavern State Park, I've been working with Doc Watson up there since 2017. Actually, before he got there, he transferred from the Satan unit. But they've got issues up there. They're in the recharge zone of the Edwards, and that's the recharge zone. So when it rains, that water is just moving through, and he hadn't had any water moving through. I mean, at least down here, we've had water that's moving through, and we've got water in the ground, and you'll see some of the graphs I'll show here in a minute. I mean, like the city well or mud well, water's 8 feet below the ground. You know, the city well, water's 10 feet below the ground. You go up here to the city right here, water's 8 feet below the ground. The ground is not out of water. It doesn't look good because it's not right bubbling up out of the surface, but there's water in the ground. And we'll talk about that. You go up into Kickapoo Cavern State Park, there's not water in the ground because the water has moved through. And we're looking at whether he needs to drill a new well. Does he redo the pump? And we've already lowered the pump from 320 to 360, and he doesn't have the ability to get any water right now. If you go up to Kickapoo, bring your own water. And then we'll get into some of the city wells and the mud wells, and I'm going to try to wrap this up. I know we've been asked to stay long, and I'll stay as long as y'all want tonight. So Tularosa well, this is where it is on our map. Head out 334, right at Tularosa Road. It's right there. You can see it. It's got a solar panel. There's a rain gauge on top of it, and it's been there for a long time. It was original EAA well, I think, and then the Texas Water Development Board took it over a little while ago. It communicates by satellite. You can go to the website. I don't know. I don't have the website link off the top, but all this data is available online. Okay, so this is the Tularosa well, and if you look at the x-axis, it starts in January 2016 and goes all the way through January 2024. Again, this is data from the Texas Water Development Board. This is their data that we just bring in. I'm giving you a graph. This is their information. So the blue line is the depth of water, and you can see the axis on the left-hand side. This blue line, it goes up when there's water in the aquifer, and then it just drains naturally. This well is not being pumped. And so when you see the slope going down, that is natural draining of the water back into the rock mass. And so it goes up, goes down. We get rain, and remember, this isn't rain just right on top of the well that's going straight down. This is rain up north, Edwards County, Rock Springs, that's filtering down this direction, and it's being as the water's filtering through, the water level in this well is rising up. Goes up, and then we were all here in 2018, or most of us anyway. You look at it, we got the big rains of 18, 19. Look how much that water went up, right? Came down, we get a little more rain, and then look what's happened. It's gone down, maybe a little rain, maybe gone down, a little rain, gone down, a little rain, and then this is the rain Bill was talking about, I think, in July of 22. Remember, we got, 3 to 7 inches, something, 3 inches, I forget exactly. But we got rain, and there was a response. And look, that was the response. And then it comes down. Until this graph, until you get more water in the rock block and you see these big lumps right here, that spring, in my opinion, you're not going to see recharge into that spring until you start seeing response in these wells. All right? This is Kickapoo Cavern State Park. Same thing. Almost same timeline. 2017 to 2024, comes down, same exact thing, goes up, comes down, and then slowly declines. Here, they didn't get the same bump as you do in 2020 or July of 22. Why? Because they're up in the recharge zone, and that water is just moving through. Now, Tularosa well, that's down a little further to the south, that water's coming in and it's being able to raise it, but where Doc is and where they are, Texas Parks and Wildlife, Kickapoo Caverns, you can see the bottom line where it's flattened out just under 320. That what they're doing now, they're pumping, but they're getting 10 or 15 gallons a minute, and it's pumping off. And this is their main supply well for the park, for the bathrooms, for the restrooms, the waters at the spigots in the county. This is the same thing. I don't need to go through every single one, but this is also Kickapoo Cavern State Park. But my point is, what you're seeing, these rising and lowering of the water table are the rainfall response here. This is a Dooley well. Dooley's a good one. Okay. This is from, I think we put the original instrument in 2013 in Dooley. Water comes up. You can see the ground surface at 0. There's a period between 2015 and 2019 where there's a little gap in there, but where water was coming up out of the ground. For those of you who have not been out there that don't know what this looks like, there's a 9-foot steel casing pipe sitting on top of it, so the water actually rises up above the ground. And I know at one point we had water just shooting out of the top of it, and anyway, so it goes down the left. You're seeing the same response. I've got another graph, so I want to show you where we are with Dooley. Where we are with Dooley this last year. Okay, so this starts in January 2023. Water's at the ground surface. We see the decline going in July. It starts to come back up. And then in the beginning of this year, started to decline. Right now, the water is about 10 feet below the ground. Again, the county's not about to run out of water. There's water here. It's just below ground. Okay, and then let's go. So now we're going to the City of Brackett. We're going to look at the 2 City of Brackett wells and the Fort Clark mud. And then I've got a slide to show the spring. This is City well number 1. It's right behind us over here in the yard. This well is about 950 feet deep. Goes into the Edwards. And in July, in the fall of 2022, the city started using this. The city started using this, and they're giving water to the city of Spofford. And the city is not under the jurisdiction of this groundwater district. Okay? But they started pumping, and that you can see that in this graph. Okay? We'll go to City well number 2. Okay, now this one, I know it just looks like a big blue line here, but there is meaning in this graph. Okay? City well number 2 is the one right up here by the water tower, and it is the primary source for those of us here in Brackett, for water from the city. This well is 1,481 feet deep, almost 1,500 feet deep, goes down into the aquifer, and the pressure in the aquifer is so much that it's bringing water up to 20 feet below the surface. Okay? There's that much pressure in the aquifer. When the city pumps it, the drawdown, the cone of depression, the immediate drawdown is about 80, what is that? Goes 20 to 100 and something, so 80 feet maybe. Comes down, and they stop pumping, and it comes back up. It goes down and starts pumping. So what you're seeing, why there's all these blue lines, is when they turn it on, turn it off, turn it on, they're getting enough water. Okay, again, but it's 20 feet below grade. Okay, this is the mud well. Okay, so Fort Clark's mud, they've got 2 different pumping wells, and they're just north of the natural spring basin of the pool, or just north of the spring. And there's one well, mud well number 1, and then about 50 feet away, maybe not even 50 feet, maybe 20 feet, 25 feet away, there's mud well number 2. So the instrument, we've got an instrument in mud well number 2, and you can see water's about 8 feet below grade. What you're seeing, the up and down, is when the other well pumps, that's how much this well is responding from the other pumping. And we were seeing, I'll show you a graph here, another graph in a second, but so you see this one's moving about a foot. When mud was pumping their well, when it would turn on the spring, this is before, the spring's a lot lower now, but the spring was moving about 3 to 6 inches. When mud would pump, you could see the depressurization in the spring by about 3 to 6 inches. Okay?
Let me ask you something.
Yes, sir.
So, on the correlation between the two, when the city pumping, do you see is anything happening in the spring?
Director, that's a great question. We're looking at that right now. I can't answer that question right now. We're looking at it. The top of mind, what we have right now is no, but we're not discounting it. Okay? The one thing that the city well number 2 is pumping so much that it's almost a constant draw. And so unless you know exactly what's coming in, it's a water balance. It's inflow, outflow. Unless we know exactly what's coming in through the recharge, they almost have a constant draw. Now we can know what that constant draw is, but the recharge that's coming in to the aquifer in this area is changing, and so potentially, but not. We're looking at that. I don't know. We're not sure yet, but that's a great question. Let's talk about the spring. Why everybody? This is our main focus here. So something happened. You know, this is right before Easter. I mean, we were going along, and everything had been pretty much. We were declining a little bit, but we were just pretty. There was a certain amount. It may not be enough water for some. For many, I heard one individual said, "Hey, you know, we just, you know, if we did this, we could have water down to the Conley property." Well, I'd love to see water all the way past the Conley property. I think all of us would. But this is where the spring is. Let's talk about where we are. We had about 10. So what you see here, it's a little bit different. This is actually the depth of water. So we have an instrument in the bottom of the natural spring basin. It's in there. It measured it. It reports electronically. I can look at this. We can look at the data. We're sending it to Mud and Fort Clark. And this is something that we're looking to get to the website. This is something that can easily be put on a website once we have a platform, etc. And we will do that. There's no always hide anything over here. But something happened right before Easter. And as normal, you took water out of the recreational pool, put it in the creek, and so your spring gauge goes up a little bit. The USGS gauge goes up to acknowledge that. And then we took water from the natural spring and put it in the recreational pool. And they've been doing this for a long time. But on this particular occasion, right before Easter, it didn't come back up. We've been doing this and it would come back up. It didn't come back up. Now, is there a chance that somebody pumped something and that on the exact same time and this is it? Let me know. If you see something, but something happened on this date right before Easter, and then you couldn't fill the well or couldn't fill the pool all the way up, and so then the port had to buy water.
Let's go back to your other between the city and the fort.
Matt, would you speak up? Nobody can hear you.
Between the city and the Fort Wells. So when this thing dropped, there wasn't anything that happened with those wells. On your deals, they were bouncing back it up.
Those, you know what? That's a great question. Not on Mud 2, not on City 1. Let me go back and look, because we did look at something, and I thought something else was dropping at the same time, but Matt, I don't have that right now, sir.
That's something to look at, because the correlation between everybody else that's pumping is coming back up. Why didn't this come back up?
Yep. I don't have an answer for you right now, but I'm actively engaged in trying to look at this. Okay, this is, y'all seen this. I was just going to say all this data is available, but y'all already know that. But the one thing here is that if you look, we really have not had any deep aquifer recharge in the county since about 2020. And, Bill was talking about different rainfalls and a different amount, how much goes back into the recharge. And if this year we had 1/10 of an inch of rain every day, we'd have 36.5, actually 36.6 this year, 36.5 inches of rain. How much of that rain would get deep into the aquifer that would be useful? Zero. Minimal. We'd have a bunch of grasses growing. You have 1/10 of an inch of rain. And so how much we get, where we get it, is extremely important for hydrogeology. And so here's a graph of the spring. The spring, it's gone up, and it's gone down, and it's going lower. I leave you with this, because in the 1960s, when the spring went dry, Fort Clark Association drilled a well and put 2 pipes into the spring to fill the spring. This photo was taken yesterday. These concrete cables, you can see the pipes are right here. Okay. I can't see them.
You had it on.
Oh, I can't. It doesn't show them. Anyway, you can see the pipes. The 2 8-inch steel pipes, they come in, the concrete cable will support the pipe, and they had to put water into the spring. This isn't an unheard of thing. With that, I will leave you. Any director questions?
I think the big thing that I'm interested in to see how that, there's got to be a correlation to something.
I would 100% agree. There's a correlation to something. And what's difficult is in a karst formation, water level or the pressure in the aquifer could have been putting water to here, and there's a conduit that goes one direction, and as once we went lower like this, boom, all that water went away, and all that source goes away. And that's the complexities of where we're at in trying to understand it. This isn't porosity engineering. Ms. Hobbs.
I just wanted to point out one thing. I can flip back to that previous thing.
Which one?
It showed the 2 pipes coming in.
Oh, your two pipelines.
Okay. In the 60s, when that water was being pumped in from the well or what have you, that was before Fort Clark Springs Association came into existence. That would have been when Ground Road had it as a guest room.
Okay.
That just clarification is all.
Yep.
So where does that water come from? I mean, where's the well that was pumped?
Well, there's some discussion on that. There's a lot of old timers around here that can help us out. I don't know exactly. It was north. Is that north? Right? Yeah, north and south, or north and south. What is that?
Yeah.
West and south, southwest, I believe. Right? North and south. Great answer.
Thanks, Jim. Has anybody else got any director's comments or anything?
And I will stay here tonight as long as anybody wants to talk to me.
I'm pretty sure that they got a bunch of questions for you. Item number 16, the general manager's report.
Okay, since the last board meeting, there was application submitted for an exempt well out on Highway 334, almost at the county line. Well, it's been there for a long, long time. The man, he happens to be a little bit older than me, but he said he could remember, and his dad remembered, in the drought of the 50s, that well never went dry, but gone dry now. So he's, submitted an application to drill a new well. The GMA 7 meeting met March 21st. All the members that were present submitted the success, if you will, of their management plan and what they've accomplished in their management plan. This is something that's required by Chapter 36 that the GMAs do like every year, is report on their management plan. Let's see, GMA 10 will meet April 15th. They'll be doing the finalization of the interlocal agreement that you'll approve, which I appreciate, and also the interlocal agreement. And then they'll be reporting on then discussing the EFC planning schedule, and the consultant, Collier consultant, will be there to report on some tech memo factors, exempt use estimates, environmental impacts, and so forth. Region J will meet April 25th in Kerrville. Reports for various entities. Consultant Lips Brands Corollo on the schedule for the regional water planning. It's in the midst of tech memos for the 2026 pathway water plan. And take action on the tech memo as required by the Texas Water Development Rule to authorize Corollo to continue work with the Texas Water Development Board, clarification and possible action. Our scholarships, we've had a couple of inquiries so far. No one has submitted anything into the office on the application for the scholarship. For the scholarship. That's not unusual because they tend to wait till right at the last. The cutoff date is April the 26th at 3 o'clock that afternoon. So if anyone knows a graduating senior that's might be interested or the scholarship, a scholarship would help them, please tell them to stop at the office, send us an email. They can also talk to the counselor in school. She has the forms and all that. We would appreciate everyone. We only had one individual last year. I don't know if the kids, I don't know if they're afraid of water. I'm not sure what it is, but we just didn't have one last year that applied. So hopefully we'll have more, quite a few more this year. I hope so. That's all I have.
Okay. Any director got any questions for Jim? Okay, before I close, Dr. Bill and Jim are going to be here to answer any questions or take questions from anybody. I do not want this thing to get out of hand. So, I want everybody to be respectful. And like I said, I don't feel anything going out of hand here. So, I'm going to leave that being said. Item number 17 is adjourned. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.